Hello everyone and welcome to another Year 5 and 6 English tutorial. Today is our writing challenge day and today we're going to be taking our inspiration from this book, Thief by Malorie Blackman. Now she is a fantastic author who has written lots of books that you might enjoy, like Antidote and Hacker and Pig Heart Boy, to name but a few. But to give you a bit of a flavour of what this book is about, I'm going to read you the blurb from the back. So I'm going to read you this section. So it says, "You're the new girl in school. You're just trying to fit in and it's not working. Then someone accuses you of theft and you think things can't get any worse until you get caught in a freak storm. The next thing you know, you're in the future, being shot at for being out after curfew. You don't even recognise your hometown and you're heading for a confrontation from your worst nightmare." So from beginning to end, it is a real page turner and I would highly recommend it. But to warm us up for today's challenge, we are going to start off with a few quick starter activities. And for that, we are going to use one of the sentences from chapter 10 in the book, which is the chapter just after Lydia's been caught up in this freak storm and she's awoken. And though she doesn't know it yet, she is in the future, in this futuristic world. So it says, "With a start, Lydia sat up." And what I would like you to do first for me today is, like we did on the previous writing challenge, is extend this sentence by adding some different things at the end. So first of all, I'd like you to extend it with a but, then an and, then a so that, then a because, then a semicolon. Now remember, your semicolon can be used to link two related sentences and it acts a little bit like a coordinating conjunction, like an and or a but in our sentence. Okay, so this next one will be linked to what we said in this previous sentence here. And then for the last one, I'd like you to try and add in a colon. Now remember, our colon acts a little bit like a subordinating conjunction in our sentence. So it might act a little bit like a because. And the part that comes after the colon might give us a bit of an explanation about what happened in this part before the colon. So if you're feeling confident and you're ready, then pause the video there and have a go at extending these sentences yourself. If you're not sure, then keep the video running and I'll reveal what I've put for mine. And then you can pause the video afterwards and have a go at your own. Okay, so let me show you what I've got for these first ones. And these aren't the only answers, they are just my ideas. Okay, and I've tried to incorporate some of those clues that we took from the blurb on the back. So I'm starting to build those into what I'm thinking about already. So for the first one, I said, "With a start, Lydia sat up, but she couldn't force her eyes open." So like something's happened when she got caught in this freak storm and she can't quite open her eyes yet. With a start, Lydia sat up and searched around for the bag. So I was starting to think about this thing that she was accused of stealing. So maybe she's got that, maybe she stole it, maybe she didn't, maybe she's got it by accident, but she's starting to search around for it to check whether she's still got it. Then I've said, with a start, Lydia sat up so that she could work out where she was. So why did she sit up? So that she could work out where she was. With a start, Lydia sat up because the sudden silence was deafening. So what was the reason for her sitting up? What made her do that? And I have said about this sudden silence. So this idea that there was lots of noise from this storm and then it's suddenly gone quiet and that has alerted her body that something has changed. Then for the semicolon and the colon, which are the ones you might have found more tricky, I said, with a start, Lydia sat up. No one else seemed to have heard it. So I've answered a question that I had in my head because I was wondering whether she was alone in that storm when she got caught up. But in this sentence, I've imagined that she was with some other people, but no one else seems to have heard it. Okay, so it's linked to this one. She's heard a noise and sat up, but no one else seems to have heard it. Then in this last one, remember the colon was going to act a little bit like an explanation. I've said, with a start, Lydia sat up. This is sort of saying why? And then it said the sirens had started again. So if you remember on the blurb, it said about her being out after curfew, which means out after the time that you're meant to be inside. So I've had this idea that maybe there were some sirens going on that tell them when it is curfew time, and those sirens have started, and that is what made her sit up. So if you haven't had a go at that and you were waiting to see what some of my ideas were, then have a go at that now. If you've already had your go, then you are ready for my next quick warm up challenge. So I'm going to peel away this one and we are on to stage 2. So this time, we're going to be working with the same sentence for the moment. We're going to be using this with a start, Lydia set up. But there are 2 challenges I'd like you to do this time. So first of all, I'd like you to expand this sentence. So I'd like you to make it longer by adding a present participle phrase at the end. Now remember, the present participle phrase is a phrase that starts with the present participle, which is an in word, okay? Like thinking or walking or feeling, okay? So you need to see if you can add a phrase that starts with one of those in words at the end of this sentence. Okay, and then the second challenge is to change the fronted adverbial, which is the with a start bit, so that it starts without rather than with. Okay, so if you're feeling confident and like you could give those a go, then have a go. Pause the video and have a go now. If you're not, then keep the video running. You can see what I've put and then you can pause it afterwards and have a go yourself. So let me show you what I've put for the first one. Remember, if you have had a go, that these aren't the only answers. These are just some examples of what you might have had. So for the first one, I've said, with a start, Lydia sat up, breathing deeply. So what was she doing when she sat up? She was breathing deeply. She's trying to get her breath back. And then I've given another example here of her rubbing her throbbing head. Okay, so this idea that she's got a bit of a headache from whatever's happened to her. Okay, you need to remember that you've got your comma to add your present participle phrase on, and then make sure you've got the full stop at the end. Okay, and then for this one, changing the fronted adverbial. So it's going to start with without instead of a with. And I have said, without opening her eyes, Lydia sat up. So it might be without and then something she didn't do. So without opening her eyes, without looking around, without taking a moment. Okay. Then this one, I've said without a word. Okay, so she's done it silently. So if you haven't had a go, now you've seen my examples, then have a go now. If you have, then you are ready for the challenge for today. So what we are going to be doing is we are going to be starting from this part of the story, and I want you to carry on from there as far as you are able or as far as you want to go. Okay. Now, I've already read you the blurb from the back, so that's already given us a few ideas in our head. So we're thinking about this storm. What sort of storm was it that she was caught up in? Was it a thunderstorm? Was it a tornado? Does she remember what type of storm it was? We've got this idea that she was accused of theft. She was accused of stealing something. So what was she accused of stealing? And did she actually do it? Did she have it with her when the storm started? And has she still got it with her now? Or has it mysteriously disappeared? Okay, so there are lots of things that we can start to think about. I'm going to read you, because that wasn't the very beginning of chapter 10. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you the very beginning of chapter 10 up until this sentence. And then hopefully that will get you in the mood and get your juice going. Then I will show you my ideas for what I have written. So the chapter is called A Change in the Weather, because she was caught in this storm, remember. It says, sunlight warmed Lydia's face. Daylight, bright and welcome, seeped past her eyelids. Lydia thought about opening her eyes, then decided against it. If she didn't open her eyes, then maybe the relentless pounding in her head would fade. She was wrapped in a cloak of silence, and in spite of her throbbing head, felt strangely relaxed, peaceful. It was an almost forgotten feeling. But then she remembered. With a start, Lydia sat up. Okay, so she's woken up. She's not quite sure where she is. Her head is throbbing. Why would her head be throbbing? Okay, and then suddenly she remembers and things start to come flooding back to her. So I've used that as my inspiration and I've carried on. Now, I haven't carried on very far because I've got a 3-year-old to look after at the minute, but you can take it as far as you would like to. So I'm going to peel this down and show you what I have written. Now, you do not have to write it anything like what I've written. And if you've got your own creative ideas, then feel free to take it on whatever path you would like. I know some of you always have fantastic ideas for your writing, but for those of you who find it a little bit more tricky to get started, here's what I started with. I'll read it for you and point out some of the features you might want to use in your writing. So it says, with a start, Lydia sat up. Her eyes snapped open to their limits, trying to make out some familiar landmark, but her eyes couldn't focus, and everything was an unfamiliar blur. As the pounding intensified, her hand flew to her head, but nothing could stop the blinding pain. It was like a crescendo of voices screaming at her. In a rush, it all came flooding back. Their painful accusations, the furious row, the accident. But there was more. Her panicked escape, the sudden downpour, the swirling vortex, the deafening boom. Everything after that was blackness. Now that her eyes had finally adjusted, she looked around, mystified. Something must have hit her. Something must have knocked her unconscious. But for how long? With the sky now clear and the sun blazing down, it must have been a while. Placing her hands down to steady herself once again, she gasped. Something was wrong. As she let the dirt trickle through her fingers, she realised it was dry. The ground was dry. But how? Okay, so that's where I've taken it. I haven't taken it much further. I haven't started to introduce this futuristic world at all yet. Okay, but you can see some of the features that I have used. So I've started off some of my sentences. You can see here in red. These ones I've marked where I've used some of my fronted adverbials. So with a start, which was the one we were given, and in a rush here. I've tried to use those present participle phrases because I know we've talked about them on lots of videos. So I've added one after my comma here and said trying to make out some familiar landmarks. So she's looking around for something she recognises. And then I've used another one down here at the beginning of my sentence. So placing her hands down to steady herself once again. Okay, here I've used a subordinate clause to open my sentence. So remember, a subordinate clause needs to have a subject, which is the pounding, and a verb, which would be intensified, which means got worse. So as the pounding intensified, when it's at the beginning of our sentence, we need to remember our comma. And I've used one here, again, at the beginning of my sentence down there. I've also tried to add in a few here. Colons for a list, because that is something we've been talking about on a previous tutorial, and another colon for a list here. And though we haven't talked about it yet in tutorials, I know lots of us have talked about it in class, so I've also used semicolons to link two related sentences together there for you. Okay, so hopefully you've got lots of ideas flowing now and you're ready to start your own piece of writing. Take it as far as you can. If you want to write me a whole story, I would be amazed, and I would love to see some photos of it. Or if you're typing it, you could send it to the school office and they'll make sure that it gets to me. But thank you very, very much for watching. I hope it has inspired you to get writing, and hopefully I will see you on another tutorial. Thank you.